Well, hello, everybody. There. Can everybody hear me? Somebody let me know that you can at least hear me.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. All right. And you can see the screen. That's just a backdrop. Farming in Dutchess County.
Yep.
The virtual series. Excellent. Very good. Very good. I believe it's 7 o'clock. Let me take a look. 6:59. Okay. All right. I know that we have about 40 people that signed up. We're at 17 on board right now. We'll wait just a minute probably. Bear with me. I've got 3 dogs down here with me, so I will mute and I will take a turn off my video. We are recording this, just so you all know that, and we will have it available probably one day next week so that you can have it. We will probably be posting it on the Dutchess County website, as well as Cornell Cooperative Extension's website, so that you will have a copy of this for posterity if you'd like.
Settings. Zoom.
Steve, I'm going to go ahead and mute you just for now until we get started. All right.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to get started only because I do a lot of the introduction type things. My name is Jennifer Fimble. I'm the Dutchess County Agricultural Navigator. I'm also a Cornell Cooperative Extension educator here in Dutchess County for agriculture. I've been here for 35 years, working in the agricultural industry. I'm really excited about this first virtual farming in Dutchess County event. This is the very first one, so bear with us, give us a little bit of latitude. We are recording it for those of you just joining us. So it will be available after probably next week, early next week. For those of you who would like to review it or whatever you missed, if you have to cut out early, we all understand people are busy. Because we couldn't have an ag forum at the Dutchess County Fair last year, this is something the Dutchess County Agricultural Advisory Committee decided to go ahead and do in lieu, so to keep everybody in touch what's going on in the county, for a variety of different people. And so some of the topics that we're going to be covering this spring, let me see if I can find let's see, do a new share. No, can't do that. All right, so we're going to be doing the one tonight, which is on communicating with farmers, landowners, assessors, getting involved in farmland protection and conservation easements. We're going to have one on encroaching environments onto farms. So that means homeowners or construction taking away farmland, and what's it like to farm in those kinds of environments.
Jen, excuse me for interrupting. You're not recording. I don't know if you want to start recording now. You have to click the record button on.
Okay, it says recording. It says recording on this.
Oh, okay.
On this device. It does say that. Recording on
okay,
this computer.
Then you're good. Sorry.
That's all right. And the red light is on. So we're good. Thank you, Steph. We're going to do one on getting ag education into schools, which will be really exciting. We've got 3 FFA programs here in Dutchess County now, for those of you who don't know that. So we went from 1 to having 3 in the last couple of years. And we're going to have one on food security and food insecurities, food deserts within the county. And then one on basically the farm stores and how they're doing and what they've done to change, how they've changed their lives in the past year. Now it's a year. So those will be one in March, one in April, one in May, and I believe 2 in June. So it's really exciting. We're really looking forward to trying this out. Again, bear with us. So the Dutchess County Ag Navigator position is a grant funded position through Dutchess County. It was an RFP or a request for proposals. Cornell Cooperative Extension won that proposal in 2016. We're still at it. We hope that we'll be funded for several years to come on this. I'd like to introduce Shelby, if you can raise your hand. I don't know if you can all see that or not, but she doesn't have video on her computer. Shelby Frank is a senior planner with Dutchess County Planning. She is my right arm when it comes to all this. There she goes. She is going to help keep track of your questions in the chat box. If you're not familiar with doing Zoom, if you cursor down towards the bottom of your screen, or sometimes it's the top of your screen, there should be a place that says for chat, or if you go to participants, I think you can do it there. I'm not sure how it is on my screen looks a little bit different. There may be a bar that says 3 dots over it, says more, then you go over to that and it says chat. You can chat to a regular person, so you can text basically behind my back if you'd like, or you can just make the question for everybody. But make sure that you know who it's going to before you hit the send button. So we will take questions throughout, but I think we're going to let our speakers that are on do their piece first, so that they can get going and do their thing. So we asked a landowner, we asked a farmer, we asked an assessor, and we've got a couple of people for doing land conservation easements and farmland protection. What we did not end up with, though, was an actual landowner. We asked at least 6 different landowners, between 4 different people, at least 6 landowners, and either they weren't available, or they didn't respond, or they just didn't want to do it. So Brian Skorlick, so I don't know, Brian, if you can raise your hand, or if you're on video or whatever. Brian Skorlick is the executive director of the Soil and Water Office. So it's Dutchess County Soil and Water Conservation District. Did you even raise your hand, Brian? I know you're here. So he and I are going to handle sort of the landowner perspective. A lot of the questions that new landowners who want to have farming done on their property, what they may ask or what they may come across. So those of you who are on this call who are thinking about having a farm on there, hopefully we'll address your questions. If not, type it in the chat and Shelby will let me know and we'll go forward from there. So is Isaac Kuhn on the call? Is Isaac on there? Let me see if I can find Isaac.
I'm here.
All right, terrific. Isaac's here. He's our farmer. All right, and so I'm going to start with Isaac. Some people call him Ike. I call him Isaac. He's with Coons Brothers Farm in Amenia, dairy farm, and I'm going to let him talk about, he's going to start with what he does, where he's located, and we're going to take it from there. I think we've got some good questions ahead of time for him, and if you have questions, please feel free to write them in the chat, and we're about to get started. So Isaac, thank you so much for being our first speaker tonight, and go ahead, introduce yourself, and we'll get started.
All right, thank you. My name's Isaac Cohn from Coon Brothers Farm. We are in Amenia, New York. We milk about 300 cows, Holsteins and Guernseys. We also crop about, it's close to 2,000 acres in total. We grow corn, soybeans, wheat, and hay if we feed for feeding our livestock, and we sell quite a bit too. We own about 200 acres that we can farm, and all the rest that was land that we lease from within a 6-mile radius of our farm. Do you need anything else, Jen?
Unmute. There we go. I'm unmuted now. I don't need any more from you about that, but however,
Okay.
so I think that as a farmer who does a lot of leases, you work with a lot of different landowners, correct?
Yes. Yes.
why don't you talk a little bit about how that works? You know, there's a lot of landowners who think, I'm going to get, I'm going to have my taxes paid by the farmer by collecting money from rent from the farmer. So you tell me a little bit about how that works for you in reality.
In reality, I mean, there's properties we do pay some rent for. A lot of it depends on the quality of the ground that's there, how many acres are there. Usually the savings from the ag assessment is a lot more than what they think it is. But for us, for finding ground, we've been very fortunate. A lot of people have come to us, and they're happy to have the ag assessment and the reduced taxes on that. And it's they're usually pretty good, and some of the rent is trying to not real high, but it's something, but it's usually fair for everybody.
Terrific. Okay, so when you're in the process of working with a landowner, do you approach them, or have you been approached by landowners?
Pretty much everyone has approached us.
Okay.
Just we try to do the best job we can, and if there's a new landowner, they'll talk to their neighbors, or people will send them our way, or.
Absolutely. Okay. No, and this is something that happens a lot. So for those of you who are new to this, this is how things generally work here in Dutchess County. So talk a little bit about who files the paperwork for the ag value assessment. Is it you? Is it the landowner? Who's responsible in your situations for getting it to the assessor?
It's the landowner's responsibility to get it to the assessor. I mean, we help them fill the paperwork out, and you need to have the lease and make sure all the information's correct, but it's the landowner's responsibility to get it there.
Okay. All right. And I think people need to take note of that. I think they just think the farmer takes over, and it really is up to the landowner in most cases, unless it's a specified type of thing. What kind of leases do you work with, Isaac?
They're very simple. We have a lease because we need one. Most of them are kind of along the lines of, handshake agreement, but you have to have the piece of paper. So most of them are pretty simple.
Can you just,
Usually, I think we usually have ours are 5-year leases for the most part.
so simple as we, Coons Brothers Farm, agree to farm so-and-so's property,
Yes.
Okay, that's, I'm trying to get at because.
This many number of acres, and it varies for every landowner. I
Yeah.
mean,
No, that's fine. And that's the point I'm trying to get at. Originally, we were going to have an attorney on this call today, but really most farmers don't use an attorney. It's usually the landowners who want the attorney. And so just so you all have kind of an idea of how this works, it's kept simple for a reason. And I think that makes it really critical. So Isaac, do you ever talk to your landowners? I know I get a lot of calls about, well, what if they just want to put corn in and it's, and I really don't want corn in that field. I tell them to talk to the farmer, but do you make those communications clear with your landowners, what you're going to be growing, if you're going to be using any herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers, or whatever?
yes, we do. Maybe not specifically what we use, but if they ask, we'll be more than happy to give them the information of what we use, or we do tell them, what we're going to plant or how our crop rotation works. There's some of them that don't want corn, or, and we're pretty flexible to work with them. I mean, even to the point where we have some of them, if they have a big event going on at their house, they'll call, tell us, and we'll make sure we're not spreading manure or spraying corn or something in the air, on their land that day or that weekend or something, just. We try to get along with them because we need them as much as they need us.
Absolutely. I think that that's a really important point, Isaac. I think that that's critical to the success that we have here in Dutchess County, is not only the landowners are willing to let our farmers farm, but our farmers need that land to continue farming. In actuality, Isaac, how many acres does Coons Brothers Farm actually own?
It's
compared to-
212, I believe.
Okay, compared to how many do you farm?
A little over 2,000.
So that makes it possible for them to farm. Okay, so that's, and you have, some marginal land that you have, like your yearling heifers out on, and, it's for grazing land, stuff that, that's, some of it's for crops, some of it's for hay land. Some
Yeah,
of it's left idle. Yeah. So that's, I think, an important part. Okay. There was just one other thing that I was going to remember to ask you, and now I've forgotten what it was. So you don't go out looking for, well, you don't really go looking for landowners, because you guys are in an area, I think, that are, a lot of larger tract landowners than other parts of the county. And so it makes it a little bit easier.
yes.
Now, you would not, how far would you consider going for a piece of property if it was the right property, distance wise, from the main farm?
10, 15 miles for it, depending on the size of the property and the quality of the ground. I mean, where we are, there are 3 other farmers in the area that use land around us. I mean, we kind of, they're big farmers, and we have a kind of agreement that we don't argue over land with one another, because nobody's going to win in that situation.
Absolutely. And what I try to tell landowners, and Brian, I'm sure you've had to run into the same thing, somebody down in Wappingers is not going to have Isaac Coon come down and farm his property. It just isn't going to happen, between trying to get, equipment there. So I think that's, for those of you that are new to this game, this is what, that's an important factor. You need to find farmers that are relatively close to you. And what happens, Isaac, how many farmers do you think, and you're in a farming community, if you decided that, if the landowner decided that he or she did not like how you did things or what you were doing, and they decided to cancel whatever it is you're doing with them, how many other people in the area do you think would actually be able to take over? Just given our little pocket up here in the northeast quadrant of the county. It's not many, I know that.
No, there's not many. 3 or 4 maybe.
Right.
But
So the point I'm
those
getting,
3 or 4 kind of have the same system that we do too. So
so the point I'm making is that farming is a close-knit situation, and B, you have many more landowners than you do farmers. And so you need to take care of your farmers. That is critical, because there's not going to be very many to be able to take their place, and they do talk to each other, right?
yeah,
So
there's not many of us.
So I think that's a very important piece for everybody to remember. Any questions for Isaac right this minute? Don't go anywhere, Isaac. You got to stay for the whole thing.
Okay.
Okay, nothing's coming up in the chat bar. That's actually, I guess we're covering it pretty well. So when a landowner or a new farmer comes to me, or there's somebody buying property in the county, the first thing that, they ask me is, oh, I want to have a farmer come in, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I ask them if have they had a conversation with their assessor? Sometimes they have, and sometimes they haven't. And I tell them that that's one of the first places they should actually go to talk. Make nice with your assessor. It just makes your life a whole lot easier down the road. Am I right, Isaac?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I think that's something, and that's why we have Steve Godovich tonight. He's our assessor from the town of Stamford. Isaac, you can go ahead and hit mute if you'd like, or you can talk if you'd like. That's fine. Thank you. Steve, you can go ahead and unmute. And you tell me if I'm wrong, if that's what you would rather see in your town, a new landowner come and talk to you about what their plans are before they even really get started.
Well, first of all, you make me feel like the Wizard of Oz here. Can you hear me well?
Yep.
If you can't, I don't know what to do to help it.
You're good.
All right. I'm broadcasting live from my dining room table. I wish we were all together face to face having some good Dutchess County chocolate milk, but here we are. This is the new milk. I'd like to just introduce myself a little bit. I've been in the county for 40 years, and my career, my job was being a farm manager to run agricultural operations for landowners. I'm not a landowner, but I'm a farm operator. So been doing it for 40 years and have quite a bit of time on a lot of different properties in our neck of the woods on the tractor seat. So I'm familiar with Brian's work. I'm familiar with the DLC. The last 20 years, I've been the assessor. I don't know how I got that job. None of the assessors don't know how they got it. They just end up being assessors. I've been doing it for 20 years, so I've been handling ag assessments for 20 years. And I keep a pretty tight file for ag assessments. So yeah, communication is always good. I talk to my landowners sometimes yearly or more when they might consider a change or have some questions or have some recommendations. Or so I kind of serve as a little bit of a hub of communication in my own little world. And of course, I tell them all to go to you for answers. But anything I say tonight, I really want to emphasize, I'm speaking on my assessor's experience and how I run my shop. But I'm not a lawyer, so anything I might say that might pique anybody's interest, trust me, would verify it. But I do know what I do in my town, and whether it's right or wrong, I don't know. So I'm willing to add anything to the conversation. Probably Q&A or questions from you would help guide me to information that might be useful to you.
So what do you normally require? What would be your best client's application look like, paperwork wise?
All right, first of all, you can read it, not just they can read their own handwriting, but if I can't read it, it's useless. And I've tried to teach my children that in their lives. I'd like to have an informed applicant. I'd like to have it early. A lot of people show up at the last minute, and the last minute isn't really the time to be taking time to doing things right. So on time early, March 1st, the deadline, Monday. And even now I'm getting guys that are overnighting or they're all going crazy. You know, the last bunch that are always late. So be early, be informed, and then be willing to listen to what I need to help them through the process.
So when it comes
I administrate the agricultural exemption law through Ag and Markets, I guess. It's a state program that I administrate my own little bailiwick, but I'm following state regulations in my efforts.
Yep, and there is
there's some discretion there, and I can understand. We'll get into different things tonight that I can help you with a little bit, but I understand boots on the ground. I understand the tractor seat side of it, so I think I'm pretty helpful to the farming and landowner community.
I would agree with that, Steve. And that's why we asked you here tonight, because you understand both sides of the industry itself. So what in a paperwork, if you could, I mean, a lot of us already know this, but I think if you say, you know, the application. So the application for the first year is the 305. And then after that's 305R. Then they should also have on file at least a soils worksheet that comes from Brian's office. All right, and then you get a copy of that, and usually it's redone every 10 years or so. I think that's about. I don't
know what the rules are, but I don't know unless the property changes for me. What we have, we don't have any of the old soil and water sheets anymore. The black and white photo pixelated by somebody, poor guy figuring out how many acres. And so it's very unlikely that soil types would change over 10 years unless there's some new scientific reason to do that. What I'm particularly interested in on my end of reading a soil group worksheet is use. A lot of places, a lot of properties have agricultural acres that are identified, but they're not used for agriculture. So I make sure that they get credit for their farm exemption, for their ag exemption on the use. In other words, you might have 100 acres of farmland. 10 acres might be your wife's horse pen, 2 acres might be your daughter's sunflower plantation for a school project. There, you might have a 5-acre lawn, blah, 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 blah. Or you might be planting hunting strips that have nothing to do with agriculture, but you're using the land. So I'm pretty strict about only giving ag exempts to properties that are actually being used for agriculture. And so, yeah, you need a 305 when you first get into it. I don't see too many of those anymore, except for landowners that change hands.
Yeah.
And then that precipitates a whole new 305 and a new relationship in their own right. The renewal is pretty easy. Once you're in, if nothing changes, you kind of like ride along. I keep an eye on my eggs. Actually, I enjoy in the middle of June and July riding around, looking at my eggs and make sure they're being used. So that's one of my enjoyable parts of my job is I sneak around to make sure if they're meeting all the qualifications.
Yeah.
So you do need the soil and water. That's through Brian. And you need a lease. You've mentioned that before. The lease actually is of no interest to me, other than if it's covered for farming and it's for 5 years. That's the rule. Now, the lease is very important for the landowner and the farmer because they start talking about how the land will be used, or maybe insurance. They have insurance clauses in there, or uses, like sometimes you can control wildlife, but you don't have hunting rights. There's all different ways that people agree to use a piece of property. So the lease, actually, you can file an affidavit of a lease to me, and that satisfies my needs. But it doesn't satisfy my wants. I really want to see a lease. I want to see who's using it. I want contact numbers in case I have to call or I have a question or something. So the terms of the lease is not important to me, but the contacts in the lease are important. So the lease, then you get into the 305's income statements. I notice you're going to be getting into that later, so I don't want to.
No, that's you.
do how.
That's you.
But agriculture is a industry, and the ag exemption law, I guess, demands that you produce a certain amount of product that you can document through sales. So the parameters of that are very dear and wide, and some people get pretty creative when they try to prove it. But income, so you have income, you have use, you have a lease if you're on a lease program, and that's what I'm interested in. And I enjoy being part of keeping it going.
What about for receipts? What's your favorite? Is Schedule F, receipts, actual receipts, or copies, or what do you like to see?
I like the Schedule F best of all, but I can't demand it.
Right.
I have some places that give me a shoebox full of receipts from everything from 2 dozen of eggs to
Yep.
wagon load of hays, or so I get all different ways, but it's really the easiest for me. A 1040 Schedule F is easy to read to me, and I know exactly the numbers I'm looking for, and they've usually been documented through an accountant or something. And the only thing I warn people, if they do give me a Schedule F, that gives me the right to contact the IRS to confirm it.
Right.
So sometimes I always, even when they do give it to me, I make sure they know that. So
Yeah.
you didn't get a Schedule F off a TurboTax and fill it in the way you wanted to give it to you. There's pretty creative people out there, so
I know that. I know that.
I just like to keep everybody honest, but that's the easiest. Some farmers like Isaac, it's obvious, you know, they probably have $1 million milk check and it probably costs them 1.2 million in production costs to get there. That's not an argument. It's when you get into the marginal properties and creative lease arrangements. I have a hard time. You get rolling around with LLCs leasing to each other, and so it can get tangled, but it's a minority. Most of the work I do with landowners and farmers and leasees and leaseors, it's pretty straightforward. But there's that crew that's pretty creative that I keep my eye on.
Yep. Okay.
And
No,
I
and
mean, I grant what they deserve and what they earn.
so we have a question. The farmer leasing the property is the one supplying the Schedule F. So they give a copy of it to their landowner, who then brings it into you in a lease situation?
When you lease a piece of property to a farmer, for it to be qualified, it has to be leased to a qualified farmer. Generally, what that means is that the farmer qualifies for ag exempt in his own right, and then he can use your property to increase his operation. And the landowner really does not have to worry about, if the farmer's qualified, the landowner's rides under their umbrella for qualifications on their property.
But
So it would just, yeah.
So it's the farmer that provides it.
If it's the farmer that provides it if asked for, yeah.
There you go.
Now, if I have a farmer in town, he's already a farmer, he's already qualified, and he's leasing somebody else, I don't bridge the two really, other than through the lease. I don't demand double paperwork.
Right.
But
okay.
Somehow, or a property owner may wish to qualify on their own right, even though they're leasing the ground to a farmer. And they can do that if they can prove without a doubt that the production value of the crop that the farmer made was $10,000 or more. That's pretty hard to do, but it's doable.
Yeah.
That's not an avenue, an option that very many landowners take.
Right. So it's my understanding that every assessor has there are some areas where assessors do things just a little bit differently. So you might do things one way, another assessor does things a little bit differently. And so that people can't go from, well, my assessor doesn't do it that way, or my assessor is nicer than you are, or my assessor is not as lenient as you are. But there is some latitude between assessors. Is that not correct? To a point.
Yeah, that's very
To a
correct.
point.
There's all these little bits and there's discretion on my part, and I've got that same thing posed to me. Well, that's not what the assessor, I have a place in Columbia County. That's not how they do it. I can't help you there. All I know is what I'm doing right here is between me and you. And
Okay.
usually in our assessing community, like Isaac, there's very few assessors around, very few assessors in our neighborhood. So if we have questions about an agricultural unit from out of town, we generally call up the other assessor and, hey, what are they doing? They do legit, are they covered by you? Or we talk to each other too.
Yeah.
So we work hard to keep everything straight.
I have another question in here. So the question is it $10,000 combined for both the lease property and the farmer's property? So a total of 20,000?
I presume we're talking about lease agreements here.
Yeah, that's what
Or
it says, a lease
farmer.
property and a farmer's property. So if a farmer was leasing an additional, additional property, do they have to
Yep.
gross the 10,000 on each of those different properties?
No, they don't. They only have to grow, as a qualifying farmer, they only have to produce $10,000 or more from their agricultural operation. And their agricultural operation might involve a home farm plus other leased areas. So
Right.
out of all that basket, they got to make the 10. And if they do, they cover all the land that they use. And each individual property that they use that's not theirs qualifies under their qualifications.
But you don't
Mm.
combine, see if I can remember how this goes, because some people do it one way, which is, okay, as long as you're grossing the 20,000, but really in actuality, you need to at least, some assessors will look at it as individual parcels. So if someone's got one parcel that's 10 acres,
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? And that
yeah,
it really does. So
yeah, no,
I just want to make sure that that's something that's one of those things that is
yeah.
a leeway one thing. Okay.
That's
'Cause I know
a
some
good
assess-
nuance and a good question.
Yeah.
I learned actually in college, was it's being reinformed here working with DEC with forestry exemptions and ag exemptions, but
Right.
the property I retired from was a compilation of 7 different properties. And generally farms in this area were, well, somebody was going out, so they bought the neighbor and they bought another piece over here, and it never combined into just being one. So I've always considered, even leasers, a single owner, I don't care how many properties you got, is a single owner, and a single farmer is a single farmer. I don't care how many properties he's got or leases. So a landowner that has 3 properties and involves 3 agricultural endeavors by the ag operator, by the farmer, that's all considered, but to me, to be a one rental unit owned through, even though it's 3 units, it's owned by one person and it's being farmed by one person. So I do combine them. I
Okay.
do.
And then, so I've got a question because it's related to that, and then there's another one in the chat box. So when you have a property owner, and I often hear this question, we want somebody to farm it for now, but we want to keep some of it that we're going to try to farm too. So now you have 2 different people trying to farm the same, one parcel. Do both farmer and the landowner must, then that's separate. Each one has to gross the $10,000. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually got one piece of property in my town that's 3 people operated it.
Mhm.
So I get back down to use. So if a landowner has a piece of property and then they have a farmer come in under a lease agreement, I'll actually have the farmer come in and go over the map with a red pencil and outline what he's either gonna do or what he's done. And then if a property owner wants to try an endeavor, they can do it, but they have to independently qualify what they're doing independent of the farmer. Just because the farmer's there
Right.
doesn't mean they get exemption on their own endeavors. So, yeah, that's a good one.
Okay.
Yeah.
The one that's in the chat right now, let's see, how much property can be used towards woodland products, firewood, mulch, etc. So be careful with mulch, because that's something, mulch brought in or mulch that's created on the property. So those are 2 different things, but let's
Yeah,
start with,
we have a neighbor that does that.
right. And that's
So
not
what
considered
you want to know
agriculture.
about wood products?
Woodland products and firewood.
Yeah, woodland products and firewood. For a farmer, you're allowed 50 acres of parcel from woodland that, ironically enough, you only have to intend to harvest it or intend to make firewood. You don't even have to do it.
Right.
That's a little quirk in the law, but if you do use farm woodland products to justify your qualification for your 10,000 gross value, you can only use up to $2,000 of woodland products to help you qualify as your farm operation.
Right, I think that's a
So, and
good
you can't-
clarification.
Yeah, and woodlands have to ride with a piece of property that actually has agricultural use on it. Even if a farmer owns a 50-acre woodlot that's contiguous to his farm and his croplands, he doesn't get the woodland exemption unless he has an ag on it. You don't get an ag on it unless you get open fields. So if a farmer just owns 50 acres of woods, he doesn't get an ag exemption on it. So there's a little qualification that works for that too.
Excellent.
Mhm.
Thanks, Steve. Another question? Let's see, hold on. Whoop. Where'd it go? I've got like two. So as my farm grows, I can increase the number of acres for the exemption. So I'm going to do my spiel right here, right now, before we go any further. It's not an exemption. There are no exemptions. It's an agricultural assessment. So that's very, so, but everybody does call it the ag exemption, but it is the agricultural assessment.
That's correct.
But as my farm grows, can I increase the number of acres for the assessment? That's the question.
Yes. You can increase or decrease whatever you're doing by use. Either you buy a new property, or rent a new property, or if you own a property and you open up a field and it becomes a farmland, you can have it documented as being farmland and added to your ag exempt. So yeah, either adding your farmland by purchase or by actually reclaiming it from brush or woodland. Yeah, you can increase your farmland.
Okay.
You almost have to do a 305 for that, because in your renewal forms, it says, does the amount of acreage used for farming changed in the last year?
Right.
And if you put yes, then that starts a conversation with me. And I might demand a full-blown 305, or I just might amend my records on faith. And I do that. We don't have enough staff to keep my agricultural file pristine. Never mind the rest of my assessments and exemptions and reports and everything else that goes on. So there's a bit of flying by night that's that involves a certain amount of integrity. And yeah, I can make small changes in my file without any guilt at all. If I see that it qualifies and I see it's being used, and yeah, I got no problem.
Okay.
Some people have asked to remove some part of their properties from agricultural assessment because they know they're going to be changing the use in the next 5 or 10 years. And if you change use, that's another conversation. There's a clawback of savings of the agricultural exemption that you have to pay for if you convert the land. And some people are forward thinking, and they'll draw back some ag land and say, I don't want to exempt it anymore, and we'll let this thing die, and I won't have any obligations for clawback. So it goes both ways. Not often, but it does. Yep.
So I've got a couple more questions for you. They're in the chat box. So they're coming to me privately, but I'm not sure why. I might have said it wrong. Are you indicating that the total acreage in use by the single operation determines the income required for eligibility? For example, if a farm operation is using a total of 20 acres owned and leased, then the income required would be $10,000. I think that goes back to the several parcels. So
No, that's correct, but you have to add one qualification. The farmer has to start off with at least 7 acres of his own. So if he's farming 20 acres, some owned, some leased, at least 7 of those acres have to be owned by the farmer.
got it. That's an important piece.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
That's an important message.
That's the operational unit.
Okay, I think that answers that question. Another question. When would you require a full 305? When there's a new lease? That was one close.
Ooh, that's a hard one, because you're wading into my discretion. I could give you 20 reasons why I could ask for a full 305. And I could give you 40 reasons why I wouldn't require it. So I don't have a good answer for that one. The
It's
old
okay, Steve. We're
renewal
not
form,
looking for perfection. We're really not just,
yeah, no,
but it's a good
no, You're getting
question.
down into the rabbit hole on me now where
Yeah,
uh,
I'm
if
not.
you
I'm just
feel
reading the
yes or no,
questions.
yeah, no, that's good. No, but marginal changes I can take, but something big goes on. Let's start all over and reestablish the baseline and keep on going. But a change in lease of, like Isaac said, it's going from one guy I know to another guy I know, and they're both legit. I really don't have interest of it, as long as it's being used. But it is a change of lease, so I could demand a full 305, or I could say, okay, now I got my eyes on you. So that's good. So all right.
Okay, this is a very specific question. I'm going to ask it because it is here in the chat, but you may not be able to answer it because you don't have. It's the way to search ag and markets law is a little different. The question before was posted by one person asking about the combined acreage, and you said about the 7 acres must be owned by the farmer. They're asking, where can you find that in the ag and markets law? And what if the farm operation doesn't own any land but uses all leased acreage?
That's 2 questions.
I know that. I'm sorry, but it's the same. It's the same person.
The answer to the first one is right in the application. Now, I can't cite Real
I didn't
Property Law 305 is a
Right.
big book.
Right.
But it's right in the 305 application where it clearly says you have to have 7 or more acres and make $10,000, or if you have less than 7 acres, you have to make $50,000.
Right.
So it's possible to get an ag exempt on a 1 acre strawberry patch if you're making $50,000 for it.
Right.
But for the regular, usually, I don't have any of those in my town.
That's fine. I didn't think so. I asked it because it's here. And so it's one of those things
Yeah.
that I think that it has to look at the bigger law book, probably at the statewide office or through ag and markets.
Yeah.
But I'm asking it because we are recording. We don't have a record. This
Yeah.
won't be part of the recording of the question. So I want to make sure I get to every question, and it's fine. I don't want to
Yeah.
put you on the spot. We just did,
No.
but that's okay. It's one of those things that,
I
yes.
tell you, there's a lot of information on the 305 long form and the instructions that go with it. I
Yeah.
mean, that'll
Yes.
take you 99% of the way without any lawyers being involved.
Okay.
Pretty
I-
cut and dry if you read it slow.
Okay.
But
I think
I forget what the second part of your question was. What?
I think you
The
just
first
got to
one
the,
was 7.
what if a
where
farm
does it say 7 or
operation
more?
doesn't own any land, but uses just all leased
Ah.
land?
Yeah, that's a good one. I actually refer that in my little world as a tenant farmer. So that would be if a farmer rents a piece of property and qualifies it in its own right for the landowner, the agricultural operator also becomes a qualified agricultural operator. He qualified on over 7 acres. It doesn't matter if he owned it or not. And he met all the other criteria. Not only the lease land becomes qualified, that operator becomes qualified because he did that. That would be the tenant farmer. It's not very common, but I've got a couple of tenant farmers. They
Okay.
made right on other people's lands. Yeah.
So do any of those parcels that are rented have to be at least 7 acres, or do all of them, if it's combined, or is it okay if they're smaller and they're combined, even though they're different leases?
Yeah, I allow any size agricultural acreage on different lots as again, a whole unit. So if a landowner owns 4 pieces and rents to the farmer, and you have 50 acres on one, 8 on the other, and 2 on the other, I use a single unit.
Because it's one land, that's one landowner.
Because it's one land used by one operator. That's correct.
Right.
And I combine for the farmers, logic the same way. And I
And what if-
explained earlier, a lot of farms
Right.
are more than one person.
Right. So as long as each, yeah, so it really, there's a lot of leeway there because there's a lot of creative ways around some of that. And I think that's what I think this person was getting at, but that's, let me move on because I got a couple more questions and then I want to move on and give Steve a poor break. You've been put through the ringer tonight, which I kind of knew, but I knew you'd be able to handle it. All right. A beginning farmer purchases the farm from their parents. How or when do they apply for ag assessment without having made income on the farm yet, preventing a prorated or rollback of full land taxes?
Ooh. A new farmer starting out, it doesn't matter where they get their property from, whether they inherited from their parents or they bought it, they have to go through the same hoops. Now, if they inherit an operating farm that's already qualified and ongoing, it's just a change in command. That's a different scenario. A beginning farmer, the farm has to produce and qualify theoretically for 2 years before it's granted an agricultural assessment. So,
But if they're new to farming, has that not changed? That's a new farmer now, they can qualify the first
All
year.
right, new to farming, if you signify that you're a new farmer, 1 year's worth of qualifications will get you in.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Thank
true.
you.
That's in the application. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
After I've got two more and then that's going to have to be it, guys, until the very end. So it says, if a farmer subdivides the property and has indicated that it will be for housing in the future, should the property still receive exemption or assessment with rollback, or upon sale and construction, does the new owner roll back?
Yeah. The ag assessment program is built on, of course, use. And if it depends on 5 years worth of use. So if you change your property, now, and I want to emphasize right here that idleness is not a change in use. If you just decide not to use it, you don't have to pay any rollback. But if you put houses on it, you've made it so you've changed the use. You never can go back to farming. There's a bit of an argument over this one over actually solar farms where people will come in and put a solar farm in it. They actually have to pay rollbacks because they changed the use of the property. It'd be very difficult to revert a solar panel farm back into a farm. Very difficult.
Right.
So now in the case of who pays the rollback, generally in the ag exemption, ag assessment law, through the assessments, a buyer has to be legally notified that there may be liable for for recapture back savings. And that has to actually be in part of the closing.
Right.
And it's also part of the roll. If you ever go into the roll and you get to an ag property, it'll list the exemptions like everybody else and the name, and at the bottom will say this probably may be subject to clawback of taxes for the next 5 years or something like that. So yeah, that's a law. A lot of people have been caught with that. I just had a piece of property change hands that the buyer and the seller and the land had been leased for a long time. The buyer agreed to a price for this piece of property, then learned that there was a clawback involved, so they reduced the offering price by the amount of clawback.
Okay.
So they didn't, whoever owns it has to pay the clawback. So you're right, if it changes hands, the next guy's got to pay it.
Yeah.
But usually in a real estate deal, it'll all be out front where it'll be a concession and sale price that'll take care of the clawback for the ag exempt. if the person changes its use.
Right.
And this person intended to make a house lot out of a, like a meter acre plot. Yeah. All right.
Sorry. All right, last question. Is, let's see, whoops. There we go. Hold on. Oh, come on. Dog's got me going here. Let's see. Oh, come on, just a little bit up. There we go. Does the personal residence get excluded from the leased portion of the farmed land, taking over the existing farm business?
Whoa, is that one question or two?
That's, well, it's one person, but I think it's probably, it's the same question.
In the ag assessment law, the homestead and the homestead area around the homestead does not count as part of ag assessment. It's not ag use, and it's generally excluded. I think you had a second part to that question, though.
Taking over the existing farm business. That's all it just says. It's just
Oh, yeah.
taking over the existing farm business.
Yeah, so the homestead wouldn't have been granted any consideration for assessment. It would have been isolated through the actually through the soil group worksheet actually carves out non-agricultural use, and residential use would definitely fall in that pile over there. So yeah, that really wouldn't affect if you're changing. It wouldn't affect anything too much that way.
Perfect, Steve. Thank you. And so while we're talking about basically assessments and everything else, we in Dutchess County have the real property tax office here at the county level. There's one at the state level. Kathy Weiss is on our call as well tonight. She's going to be on our Dutchess County Ag and Farmland Protection Board. She's new to working with me, so she's going to learn my sense of humor. But she's also here on the call. If you want to mute yourself, Kathy, just to say hello, if you can, if you're still on the phone.
I
There
hope
you
I
are.
can. Can you guys hear me?
There you go. Perfect. Perfect. So,
Hi, everyone. I'm the newly appointed Director of Real Property Tax Services. Just to go over really quick what we do generally is we, one of our biggest things is preparing the tax maps for everyone, which I believe helps in creating the soil maps for the ag assessments. We also prepare the assessment rolls and the tax rolls and bills. And we work with the assessors a lot on exemptions and ag assessments with questions and things like that. So we're always here for questions. And if we can't get you an answer, we will do our best to research answers for everyone.
thank you, Kathy. So glad you could make it tonight. I'm really glad. So it's exciting to have her on
No
board.
problem.
So her predecessor has since retired. So Kathy's taken his place, and we're good to go. But so thank you very much. And so now we're going to move on to, I think, Sam Calhoun from the Columbia Land Conservancy. He's agreed to talk with us.
Yeah.
He's been there. I've known you for what, a little over a year, I think, Sam, maybe just under a year or so, around there.
A year, yeah.
Yep. So Sam and I are actually, we work on a American Farmland Trust piece that we both work on together. So we've known each other for just about a year, and he's going to talk a little bit about what they do at Columbia Land Conservancy, and I think some maybe the farmer landowner match type things that they do. And then we'll also, Becky, feel free, the two of you, if you would rather bounce off each other, that's wonderful. But I think I'm gonna let the two of you go ahead and get started. Let us, tell us kind of what you do and what you're looking for. Steve, thank you so much. I'm gonna go ahead and mute your microphone, but you're still, please stay, because I'm sure we'll get more questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Calhoun. I work at the Columbia Land Conservancy. I'm the Agricultural Programs Associate there. Mouthful. But yeah, so we're a 501c3 nonprofit land trust. We operate primarily in Columbia County, but we partner with the Dutchess Land Conservancy to do the Farmer Landowner Match Program. And we'll probably talk about that little bit more in a second, but we do a lot of private land protection, both through the donation of conservation easements, also through the purchase of development rights. And a lot of that is on farmland through state-funded grant programs. In the past, there have been federal grant programs that we've utilized to get funds into the hands of farmers in exchange for their development rights. I think we've have easements on around 10,000 acres of farmland in Columbia County. So I'll get large focus on working land, trying to make sure that farming stays active in our area and try to prevent loss from the creep of second home buyers and really sort of volatile real estate market, especially now. And then my role primarily at CLC is managing our farmer landowner match program, which, like I said, we partner with DLC on. So basically the program is hosted online. It's a website, kind of like online dating for farmers and landowners is what we say. So, you know, a farmer or a landowner can sign up, they put a profile up. If you're a landowner, we'll put up details of your property, what sorts of agricultural resources you have, make a map of your soils and maybe some wetlands and water, etc. And if you're a farmer, you can put up a profile sort of detailing what you'd like to do, what your operation is, what you're looking for in terms of infrastructure and other on-farm resources. And then we try to sort of facilitate connections and provide resources as we can. So we manage an online resources library where you can find lease templates. And like Jen said, we're part of this larger network of regional navigators that exist all around the state. It's a program run by American Farmland Trust. So there's people at Pace Law School who can do legal advice, people at different organizations around the Hudson Valley who have different expertise. So really trying to be a first point of contact and then connection to the broader sort of agricultural support network that exists in our area. And maybe I'll stop there and let Becky introduce herself, and then we can answer questions and whatever else.
Thanks, Sam. Sorry,
Yeah,
I
no
had
problem.
trouble unmuting. Hi, everybody. I'm Becky Thornton. I'm the president of the Dutchess Land Conservancy, and we are the sister organization to the Columbia Land Conservancy, and are very proud of the fact that we work together on not only the farmer match, but on other things. So the DLC was started back in 1985. We also are a 501c3 organization, and we are dedicated to protecting the agricultural, scenic, and environmental resources of Dutchess County. Since our start, we've protected about 43,700 acres, and over half of that is agricultural land. And we do a lot of, as funding has become more readily available, we have been working a lot with farmers who are interested in selling their development rights, and we are lucky to have a program, a funding program also in Dutchess County, which I know when I talk to my our friends at Columbia Land Conservancy, unfortunately they don't have the county match, and so that is our county program has actually helped effectuate a lot of projects, and probably I think it's half of the projects that we have closed on buying development rights have been protected with a county match. And so when we do these projects, we're always looking for, we're looking at a number of funding sources, and the more funding sources available, the more projects we're able to do. And then it was in 2013 that we, for many, many years, we've been getting calls from both farmers and people and the landowners saying, oh, I need a farmer, do you know of anybody? And, so a lot of, or farmers saying, I need some more land, do you know of any? And, a lot of that transaction was through word of mouth. And then we got talking to the Columbia Land Conservancy, and they had already had a farmer landowner match program in place. And so we were lucky enough to have them invite us to join them. And so since 2013, we've been really thrilled to partner with them. and have seen some really great successful matches through this program, which includes both leases and sales of properties. So with that, I'll end it. Jen, I don't know if you have some questions or things you want us to talk about more.
Well, I think that if you can maybe kind of walk us through some basics of maybe if Sam can address, kind of how some of the questions that might be pulled for farmer landowner match program, but Becky, maybe if you can address a few in the simplest format, why local and meaning municipality and county funding availability is so important as a match. And when you're going through the steps of getting a landowner who wants to either get into a conservation easement, but I think also Sam, if you can address kind of how some of those questions, sometimes if people aren't really talking, how do you match them up? What are some of those questions that might really work really well? Like one of the things I usually say, if a landowner comes, they've got a lot of property, they've got 2 beautiful pastures on either side, and they say, well, I think I'd like to have some cows there. So it's always who's going to take care of them, or are you going to mind when the farmer comes up to feed when you're having, your cocktail party, cocktail parties on Friday nights, or those kinds of things. That that's how I start. But I don't know how yours is very organized. And so if each of you maybe can address some of those beginning steps, I think will really kind of give us a flavor of how that operation works.
Okay. So Sam, do you want to go first on the farmer match?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I guess our intake is pretty simple. Once you sign up, we'll schedule a phone call with you and try to get to know you. So from a landowner's perspective, that's usually sort of asking about the property, asking if someone has previously farmed it. That's a big one. We don't want to be, grabbing land away from farmers who have historically had access to it. Or asking if they have neighbors who farm. That can be a really easy one. Like we heard about Isaac farming around his neighbor's land. So sort of opening their eyes to the possibilities that exist right in front of them. And then trying to encourage sort of really open and honest dialogue between those two parties. Sometimes those two groups are not often speaking with each other. So trying to facilitate, clear communication, both about sort of what kinds of agricultural activities you would find acceptable on your land or desirable. And then from a farmer's perspective, making sure that they're being open and honest about what their activities might be, how that might affect land, how that might smell, how that might look, and sort of taking it from there. Hope that answers your question.
I thought I was unmuted. So I do have a question, and it kind of leads Becky into actually some of what you're going to do. And you can go back and forth, obviously, but it says, what is involved in purchase development rights of a farm? So that's, I think that's a loaded question, but I think, but if maybe just, again, like I said, the very basic steps of does somebody just call you, or do you go out and solicit? I mean, I think people are looking for that kind of, so.
Sure. So first of all, just to explain what purchase of development rights is, for those who may not know, essentially we are, as a way to help protect and encourage the continuation of farming, organizations like the DLC and the CLC have the ability to buy an agricultural conservation easement on a property. And essentially what we're doing is we're buying away the development rights on your property. It doesn't mean all of them. It's a negotiation where you figure out what your needs are for the future. And then we come up with a plan. And then once that plan is agreed upon, we work to get an appraisal. So your development rights are appraised. What the appraiser has to do is it's a 2-step process. He appraises the property as if there's no restrictions on it, and you put it on the market today. Then he does a second appraisal and says, okay, if this property always has to remain as a farm, what is the value of that? What is the value of the property then? So for example, say your farm is worth $1 million if you put it on the open market today. But if it's always got to stay a farm, maybe that value is only $600,000. So that difference in value between $1 million and 600 is what you could potentially get paid to sell your development rights. So that $400,000 value. These are just totally arbitrary values because, you know, again, it's totally based on appraisal. Once and the relationship is most of the work that we've done are farmers who come to us. We try to let farmers know about this as an option, but we never push anybody into it. It really has to be something that a farmer wants to do. And so, you know, once they've said they want to do it, we'll work with them, get the appraisal. And then once we know how much, you know, the farmer's going to be paid, you know, essentially we have a discussion and say, you know, okay, do you still want to go through? Because this is what you could get if we go through this process. And if they say, yes, let's go forward, then we have to determine where that money is going to come from. And so Sam kind of mentioned earlier, you know, there's a federal program, there's a state program. In Dutchess, we have a county program. And also there's some of the towns in Dutchess have provided funding to help protect farms. And this is, it's really great when, you know, local municipalities also, you know, who have made the decision that farming is an important component, you know, important aspect of their town, you know, that they're willing to actually put in some funding towards those projects. It's really saying something. And so, you know, Red Hook is certainly one town that's made that decision, and they have a couple of different sources of funds that they provide to help match other money. You can't get all of the money in one place. So for instance, the state will not provide 100% of the funding. They'll provide between 75 and 87%, depending upon the restriction. So you have to find the balance of that funding somewhere else. The federal, the USDA will only provide 50%. So then you have to find the other 50% somewhere else. So we go through the process where we apply for the money. Once we are granted the money, and nothing's guaranteed, we never know until we actually, you know, get word from the funding source that the project has been approved. But once we have the funds in hand, there's a bunch of due diligence, just as if you're selling your property. You know, there has to be a title search and a survey. You have to work out where the farmstead complex is, where, you know, essentially most of the buildings will go. You have to negotiate the agricultural conservation easement with a farmer. And then once everything is done, and then on our side, actually, as an organization, our board has to approve the easement. Once everything is done and fully, you know, vetted, and everybody's advisors have looked at it, attorneys, et cetera, then we can set up closing. And then at that closing, the farmer gets paid. They sign an agreement that's, you know, they sign the conservation easement. And then that easement is recorded at the county clerk's office, and then it runs with the land. So if the farmer sells the property, that easement stays on the land. And it's the land trust responsibility then to oversee that easement essentially in perpetuity. So we have to ensure whatever the provisions are in that easement, you know, are followed, no matter who owns the property.
Perfect. Thank you, Becky. That's great. So I don't know which one of the two of you would like to handle it. I think using both of you is a great tool because I think that you come from both different directions, but same types of organizations. Question is TDR being utilized in towns today? And for those who don't know what TDR is, why don't you let them know that too?
So I can talk a little bit about that. So TDR is transfer of development rights, and we've actually, so I think Red Hook, and I have to say I'm not fully aware whether towns are using it or not, and I don't know if Shelby, I don't know if there's anybody else from the county planning department on who may know better, but I know that I'm pretty sure that Red Hook is using it somewhat. Transfer of development rights means that essentially you're taking the potential development of one area and shifting it to an area where you may want more intense development. So often it's used where you want to protect ag land, more rural land, and you take those development rights and they're actually banked and can be used later within an area that may be more intensely developed, like, you know, like a village or, you know, a town. And we had looked at this. There was a county county committee actually formed a number of years ago. I think it was under Bill Steinhaus. That really looked at doing this in Dutchess County, and the difficulty with trying to do it in Dutchess County is the school districts, because many towns have crossover school districts. And so if you're moving development from one area to another, you may be shifting that development and that tax income or liability from one school district to another, and it gets really, really complicated. So it's a great tool if it can be used effectively and well thought out, because it's a great way to, for instance, to protect farming. It's a great way to raise money to protect farming, because you're able to buy the development rights from the farmer. Those development rights get transferred, to another area where a developer actually pays for them. So you got, this nice balance. But the difficulty is really setting them up and using these programs effectively, especially where, you have so many school districts that cross over town lines. Shelby, did you want to say something? No.
Yeah, I thought because she unmuted, so I thought the same thing. Shelby, do you want to say something? You're actually unmuted. Huh. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Oh, now I can.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I've got a fancy new headset, and it has a mute button, so I didn't realize that was muted. Sorry about that. So again, my name is Shelby Frank. I work for the Dutchess County Planning Department. I'm a planner at the department. So in 2019, what I'll add to what Becky said was, in 2019 we conducted a county-wide farm-friendly audit. So we looked at all 30 communities' comprehensive plans and zoning codes, and we answered, I think it ended up being 41 questions per community, based on those two land use documents. And one of the questions, actually there were two questions related to PDR and TDR, related to the comprehensive plan and also the zoning code. I do recall that some communities in Dutchess County are using transfer of development rights. I'd have to dig into the audit a little bit more. Like I said, this was done in 2019 and I don't remember the specific details, but I do recall that there are communities using them. Off the top of my head, I do recall that Amenia is one of them. I will say that document is on our website. So that would be dutchessny.gov. And there's an agriculture tile. So you can go right to the middle of that page under data and find more information about that. On a similar note, we actually just released a new document based on farm friendliness. It's called Blueprint, an in-depth look at planning issues. And the inaugural edition is actually focused on farm friendliness and is based off of this audit. So if anyone's interested, feel free to check that out. And to the individual who asked that question, I'm happy to provide more information if you'd like to reach out directly. Thank you.
Good job, Shelby. Excellent. Shelby's my
Thanks.
hero.
Oh, geez. You can tell Jen is mine.
Sam, I don't know how much you do with, say, or how you, I guess I was asked, how do you determine an ag value? So if they've received a purchase of, PDR, purchase of development rights on a piece of property, and now they want to sell it. So they should be, I mean, it doesn't mean they have to, but they should be selling it at ag value. They would like to do that, but determining what ag value might be, maybe you can address some of that in a brief way. You don't have to go, I mean, I know it's complicated. I know it's very complicated, but I'll let you guys go ahead and maybe do a simple version of that.
Yeah, I mean, Becky can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe generally when you complete the purchase of development rights, it's not necessarily limiting future sales. So you can still sell a protected piece of land for the price that you can get for it. There's another aspect of the state program that we've been trying to utilize more. It's called preemptive, preemptive purchase right, PPR. Just want to get that right. And that actually limits future sales. So it puts a affordability covenant in the easement, so that when you go to sell your farm, you have to sell it to a qualified farmer at its agricultural value. And they would assume that the ag value is determined by an appraisal that is done under the assumption that it's going to remain a farm forever. So that's an additional layer that the state approved, I think, in 2019. And we've done a few CEs with that additional covenant in there. And, it's another way to maintain affordability, which is a big issue, because you see some of the farm properties around here, even ones that are protected, going for values way over what a farmer could afford to pay for it. So.
And just to add to that, that was great, Sam. To add to that, Jen, if there's somebody who wants to sell for ag value, they have a farmer who wants to buy it and they want to, be a good, want to make the deal, determining what that is easily done by an appraisal. The same appraisers who do the PDR valuations. And we can certainly provide additional advice on that. Also, if there's a landowner, there could also, if they're selling it for less than fair market value, based on the appraisal, they could get an income tax deduction for a federal income tax deduction for the difference in value, which could help offset some of the capital gain.
Right. Obviously. Yeah, no, that's great. No. And so these are some of the questions either I've gotten or I'm taking from, because my list of questions that I had put together got buried under something, so I can't even see them. So I'm winging. I am actually winging it tonight, guys. Sorry about that. So, but just trying to keep your conversation, and trying to keep things going. So we do have a couple of questions. Let's see. Somebody asked about. So this goes back to Shelby. Are the questions and audit responses online as well as per municipality?
Yes, they are. So that individual is reading my mind. I'm actually just adding the link to the countywide results table for the farm-friendly audit in the chat right now. And I'll also add the new blueprint document to the chat.
Outstanding. Thank you. Okay. And then someone says, not sure if this, and actually this will lead into our next kind of group, but I think let's stick with this, and I'll address this one with our landowner discussion with Brian and myself. Does anybody have any other questions? How long does it take? I get asked this an awful lot. How long does it take for a farm to get protected, entered into an agreement?
So if to go through a purchase of development rights program, it takes quite a while, mainly because it takes a while to develop an application and then to submit it to funding sources. And funding sources have different rounds at different times. The state normally has a funding round every 2 years, but unfortunately this past summer would have been the year they had it, which they didn't because of the current state of our economic affairs. The county is, we're really excited that the county normally has an annual funding round. The federal program, when it's available, has sort of more of a rolling funding program. So it all depends, and you have to kind of match them up together. I would say to be, 2 years, definitely at 2 years, sometimes longer. It depends upon if there's other, things that come to play in the negotiation and or a reason why the funding is delayed or whatever. So 2 years, I would say, is definitely something to keep in mind, which is actually much better than it used to be. It used to take, 4 or 5 years. So things have really improved over time. If somebody wants to protect their land and just donate an easement, if they really know what they want to do for their property, we could turn that around in 3 months. So, but you don't get any money that way.
Sam, you've got anything to add?
Actually, I did.
Like we said, we don't rush anybody into it.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, I'm going to put the link to our matching program website in the chat now in case anyone wants to look at it. So
Excellent. Thank
And I
you.
just wanted to add one thing, some people ask us, well, what are farmers using this money for? What we've seen is farmers use it to pay down their debt. Seeing Isaac with his children, some farmers use it to help transition the farm from one generation to the other. Some have used it to buy extra land to, increase their farming opportunities or to improve, agricultural, improve farm buildings or, buy more agricultural equipment. So those are just a few of the ways. And some probably bank it so they can help pay their property taxes.
Probably. Thank you guys so much. Hang on, because I'm sure, again, at the very end, we'll have just go to, if you've got a question that didn't get answered so that everybody's still here, just hang in there. So Brian and I promised to be really short about this, right, Brian? You can unmute
Yes.
yourself. Thank you, sir. All right.
Yes,
So
yes, we'll be short.
So one of the questions that did come in that kind of leads us into this whole discussion, and I think this is a great question. Why should, or what are the benefits for a new farm to join into the ag district?
All right, so basically most of the conversation tonight revolved around the ag assessment program. The ag district is a completely separate, independent opportunity that the landowners have here in New York State. At the county level, we have 4 separate ag districts. Different communities are part of one of those 4, and the landowners receive, benefits in the sense of, opportunities to continue farming, benefits from nuisance complaints, and benefits from unrestricted or excessively restrictive ordinances at the community level. The trigger for that, though, is that the producer or the landowner in this case has to be both operating the land, receiving the ag assessment, and having it enrolled in the ag district for most of those benefits to kick in. But what it really does is it looks to the longevity of the land and keeping it in production by providing some opportunities and benefits for that farmer.
And it also
You got anything
protects
to
them
add,
with the
Jim?
right to the protection with the right to farm laws as well.
Yes.
So yeah, and it's not, so it's often misconstrued that it's part of zoning. It is not a zoning thing. It just has
No.
nothing to do with zoning. So, and there's no financial benefit to being in an ag district or agricultural district. No benefit. It's
No.
the ag assessment is the beneficial piece of being in agriculture. So I don't know about you, Brian, but sometimes I am asked let's see, does the land need to be farmed to be part of the ag district?
It does not.
That's the real simple answer.
That's as simple as it gets. It does not.
But not every property
1,000
is,
caveats.
but not every property is going to qualify to be included into the agricultural district. So each year, for 7 years in a row, properties have to apply. But in Dutchess County, every county has its own date. But our Dutchess County date, the enrollment period to get a property into the ag district is May 15th or April 15th to May 14th. So April 15th is probably
Correct.
the easiest date to remember. It's a 30-day period of time that a property owner can apply to get their property into the ag district. At that time, then the process is they fill out an application, which is available at the Soil and Water Office. So it's the Dutchess County one, because the other ones all have different dates and deadlines. And some cooperative extension offices do it. We do not in our office. They fill out an application, they submit it, and then from there, it goes to the Dutchess County Ag and Farmland Protection Board for review. The board makes a recommendation based on the properties, each individual property itself and the parameters of that property. And then from there is our recommendations are sent to the county legislature. It's usually heard in the July meeting depending on the year, but July or August meeting of the county legislature. And then from there, it's either approved or disapproved, or individual properties approved or not. And then from there, it's sent on to the state. The state approves or disapproves it. And hopefully it's been better, it's getting better. It's the end of August, beginning of September. We usually hear back from the state whether that's been approved or not. So it takes from April to September to get a property actually enrolled officially into the ag district. On the 8th year, I said the first 7 years in a row, on the 8th year, all of the agricultural properties that are listed in an ag district are reviewed. And that's a task that's a tremendously difficult task to do. And that's why we don't do it any more often than every 8 years. But that requires additional personnel, a lot of mapping, a lot of looking over properties and each individual parcel. So, so that's kind of the process. And I hope, let's see. So what's the point of the ag district then? And I hope that you got it, that it helps protect, it's coupled with the ag value assessment. So if it's a farm,
Yes.
and it's receiving, it's getting that ag value assessment, then yes, and it's in the ag district, it is then eligible to be protected with the right to farm laws. I say eligible, doesn't mean it's, depending on their best management practices. But the agricultural districts were created, I think Brian's covered this, but they were created
Yep.
by New York State to prevent local municipalities from enacting laws that were restrictive to agriculture. And that's what the point of the agricultural district is, right?
For a little more information on that, being that it's a state law and that the right to farm is a state law, and that the agricultural district program is administered through state ag and markets, as Jennifer mentioned, when properties are enrolled and or reviewed on that 8-year interval that we have in Dutchess County, the Commissioner of Agriculture, Ag and Markets signs off on all of those transactions and changes and so forth within the agricultural district program. If it was ever to come into question that a community was overreaching or neighbor complaints were coming in about a particular operation or anything like that, if that farm is a bona fide operation, they're receiving their ag assessment and they're in the district, that can go right to ag and markets for review. And it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight by any means, but if there is considered a need, the commissioner and ag and market staff will review it. So it takes it out of the local jurisdiction who's usually involved in, that discussion. And it also takes it out of the courts in many instances. So it, gets you a procedure to be reviewed under that looks at the agricultural intent of the property as it was, being used, as well as, that whatever is being, complained about or the community, considered being overreach in those cases. So that's where it gets reviewed. Sometimes it ends up in court still, but that usually resolves the issues and when Ag and Markets weighs in and helps determine, what's going on.
So right here, I'm going to interject and thank you, Shelby. So we do have a county right to farm law, and it also has a dispute resolution committee involved with that. So that so it's another sort of layer to help prevent everything having to go into a legal battle, because I think that saves the farmers money, saves the land, whoever's making the complaint money, and helps, sort of helps that that dispute get resolved
Right.
rather quickly before it escalates. Once it escalates, it just gets out of control. So we do have that. So a county right to farm law is really just reiterating the fact that we have a county that is very at the highest level in the county, is very supportive of our local agriculture, that they're willing to put it out there. Yes, we believe in agriculture. And so we want to reiterate that we have a right to farm. We are a right to farm law county. And Shelby has very nicely put the link in there for me. So that's in the chat box as well. We do have another question in there. It says, does the inclusive parcels remain agriculture? When will the review happen? So that goes back to our, I think, of the process of ag districts.
Right. Yeah, so for those people that have been already enrolled or that enroll in one of the annual inclusions, generally speaking, when the 8-year review comes around, most properties are re-enrolled automatically. There's criteria that we look at and things to consider. Most of the time, the properties that are taken out under two methods. One being the landowner requested to come out of the agricultural district at that time, at that 8-year review. That's the only time it can come out officially. Or if it's determined, in most cases, it's again reviewed by the Ag and Farmland Protection Board. If it's determined that there is a change of use on that property and it's not, what it was before. So an example of that isn't so much, you're not farming it this year and it's idle now, that could stay in. But if it was a farm, and the lot previously was, let's say it was large acreage, it was 100 acres, and now it's got, 95 homes on it, pretty much not eligible to be in the ag district anymore. Those are kind of automatic factors that, get it excluded. But again, there's no hard and fast rule on that. It really looks at, the activities on the property. And also, again, if the owner at that time asks it to be taken out.
So it says, when will the review happen? So the next 8-year review is 2023.
Coming around the corner.
I know, it's getting
23,
close, I
getting there
know.
fast. And honestly, everyone, it takes a good 2 years to do that. So unfortunately, we'll be kicking it off sooner than later.
However, we did complete it in 1 full year, believe it or not.
I know.
We did.
We
It's
did it
not,
in 1
it's
year,
not
but it was
ideal, but yes,
big lift.
yes, it was. It was a lot of work. So yeah, if I was really computer savvy, I would pull up a copy of the ag district blob map so you could see how many properties, and it's about a third of Dutchess County is in an agricultural district, actually enrolled in the agricultural district. About right?
And those are parcel level enrollments, so
Yeah.
it's
Every
not, everything is potentially eligible to start with, and then it's parcel level enrollments by those landowners.
Yeah. So there's a lot. It's a huge task. So something that we didn't cover, I probably should have covered in the beginning. So why did we have this whole ag navigator type thing? The Dutchess County has an ag and farmland protection plan update. It was completed in 2015 as, wasn't it? Yeah, 2015. Don't you growl.
Yes.
And as part of that, the committee that worked on that thought that they needed somebody who's actually going to enact some of the goals that were put in the mission of the actual update. And so they called it, the contractors who helped us write this came up with an ag navigator. And it was to help implement the ag and farmland protection plan for the county. And so that's part of what I do. But the other part of that, we all, as a group there's about 30 of us on that committee, felt that we needed somebody to also work with municipal officials on matters pertaining to agriculture. So to step in to take some of the pressure off of ag and markets doesn't mean that person had to know everything, because I certainly don't know everything. But it helps a lot, I think. And I think some of you that are on the line that have used me before, that are in, either an assessor or in planning or in zoning in your town. I've gotten calls from just about every town at this point, reaching out, just asking a question. And it seems to be working, but that was so that's about half of what that position was for. So it was funded by the county. And it's 50% of my job, with some of that money going towards, administration and benefits and, secretarial help and phone and everything else. So that's just so you know what the Ag Navigator, how that came to be. So it's not me that got the grant, it's Cornell Cooperative Extension that has a grant, and I just get to be named the person as the navigator. We have a great Dutchess County Agricultural Advisory Committee that is appointed by our county executive. I report to that advisory committee. I'm not a member of that committee, but I report to them. And so we have some of those members on here tonight. And Shelby, I hope you have the list handy. As I go through who's here, at least you can help me with some of it. I know that Becky Thornton is on our board. I know that Isaac Kuhn is on the board. Brian Skorlik is on the board. Let's see who else is on the. Shelby is on there, like I am, sort of is in kind of privy to what goes on and help to take notes and kind of do some reporting. Stephanie Radin is on the board. She's from Cooperative Extension as well. She's my colleague. We have Matt Sabelico as our chair. We have Mark Adams. Boy, now I'm getting close. We have, let's see, Todd Erling from Hudson Valley Economic Development. Well, Hudson Valley Agricultural HVADC, so Agricultural Development Corporation. There we go, HVADC. Help me out, guy. We have Greg Pulver, who's chair of the legislature and also chair of the County Ag and Farmland Protection Board. Help me out. Who am I missing?
Matthew
Mark
Cady.
Condon.
Yep.
Matt Cady, Doctor, who's
Matt Cady.
from our feed store in
Matt.
Pleasant Valley. And we have Mark Condon, who's our professor. He's a chair of the, I think he's chair of the biology department at Dutchess Community College. Anybody else?
Is
Doug
he,
Giles.
Doug
Giles.
Giles.
He's on Ag
And
yep.
is it Ian?
then
Is
Owen.
Ian a member?
Owen.
I mean,
Ian?
Owen.
Owen is, yes.
Owen.
Yeah. Owen. Oh yeah,
Owen.
because Owen's not here. So yeah, no, Owen's
Owen's
usually
not here, no.
here. Yeah, so Owen's our boss. The county executive is our boss, but Owens is our boss. He keeps us he keeps us
Definitely
all
mine.
straight. He keeps us all
And is
straight.
Kathy Weiss a new member? Can you say
Kathy, you're actually on the Ag and Farmland Protection Board.
protection board?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
She's on the AFPB.
Yeah.
And then we've also got Deanna Mancuso.
Yes.
All right.
Yes,
Deanna
yes,
was
yes.
just added.
Yep.
This year.
Yes, that's right. And so she's
Yep.
Lucky Orphans Horse Rescue in Dover Plains. So yes, so it's a big group. And again, if I could have found my notes, I would have had those all right in front of me. So my apologies. Thank you guys for helping me out there. I don't see any other questions in the chat box, and we're coming up to 8:41, so it's a little bit earlier, but I'm sure nobody's going to object if we're all done early. But I want to thank each and every one of you who is our speakers tonight, are helping to lead this roundtable. I think you did a fantastic job. I'm hoping that our participants really enjoyed it. If you liked it or something, if you know how to use the reaction bar, give them some applause. So I'm going to give them some applause, because I think it's not easy to take time out of your day to volunteer to do something like this just for all of us. There you go. You got some applause there. Yay, look at that. And you guys were really great about working with being flexible. This was our first time ever really trying to do something like this. We will have it will be recorded. It does say in my little corner up here that it is being recording. So it will be available. It will be emailed to you since you are a participant. And please look for more information on our next one for sometime in March. We have not set the date for that. The committee has not. I will be moderating again. You get to hear my great voice all over again, but we will have another topic and we'll have other speakers and we'll go from there. And again, thank you all so much. And thank you for being here, and have a great night.
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, good night.
Good night.